Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We're now getting ready to start with our next section, Vui. And I'll go ahead and let her do a little bit of introduction. And then when you're done, Vui, just go ahead and say something along the lines of "hit it, John" or something, so he knows when to hit play.
Well, it's nice to meet everyone online, and I just wanted to say hello real quick. I didn't get a chance to embed my lovely face in my presentation, so I thought I can let you all see me in the flesh before I start. So there's going to be a fun little surprise in the QA, so I hope you all stick around for that.
My name is Vui Nguyen, and I'm here to talk to you about how to level up your life and career by becoming a human and programming language polyglot. So today I'm going to go over what a polyglot is. I'm going to explain who I am, give a quick public service announcement, and share some reasons for becoming a polyglot. And I'll do that. I'll demonstrate the benefits of being a polyglot by sharing a love story with you, which happens to be language lessons to my boyfriend, and end with some quick tips on becoming a polyglot. So a polyglot is a person having a speaking, reading, or writing knowledge of several languages. Who am I? Why am I talking about this topic? Well, my name is Nguyen Thị Vui. That is how you spell and pronounce my name in Vietnamese, where the family name comes first in Vietnamese. The G is not silent though, but I do make the G silent when I pronounce my name in English because the ng sound at the beginning of a word doesn't exist in English. I'm a child of Vietnamese immigrants, a second-generation Vietnamese American, and an avid fisherwoman. So my family escaped the war in Vietnam and immigrated to the United States, where we settled in Denver, Colorado, which is where I was born. And my family had a jewelry and electronics store on Federal Boulevard, and in fact, we, along with many other Vietnamese refugee families at the time, settled the area on Federal Boulevard in Denver between Mississippi and Alameda, which is now known as Little Saigon. That store was back in the 80s. It's not there anymore. And I also attended a Vietnamese church growing up where I learned to read and write in Vietnamese. Now, we're all engineers here, so the question is always, how fluent am I? Well, as a child, Vietnamese was my first language, and as it goes with a lot of children of immigrants, as I got older, English became my first language. So what does that mean? In terms of speaking, I'm fluent in English, but I'm slow and awkward when I speak in Vietnamese. As far as reading and writing goes, I'm totally fluent in English, but in Vietnamese, I can read and write phonetically. What that means is, in Vietnamese, you can sound out each letter, and with the accent marks that indicate tone, you can sound out entire words that way, which is unlike symbolic written languages where each symbol maps exactly to one word that you have to memorize. So in this way, I can read words that I don't understand, and that's possible with a phonetic language like Vietnamese. As far as programming goes, over my long career, here's a sampling of some of the programming languages that I know, including a cross-platform mobile technology language, GASP, called Titanium, which came before React Native and Xamarin. Now, before I get too deep into my presentation, I want to share a public service announcement. One, please don't expect your friends to educate you about their culture. It can be exhausting, and I'm just sharing my personal experience as a person of Vietnamese descent. I don't know everything about Vietnamese language and culture and history, and I don't represent every single Vietnamese person on the planet. I am merely representing my own personal experience. And the second thing I want to ask is, When you're with an Asian friend, never ever point at some Asian characters you see somewhere and say, "What does that say?" There's a lot of things wrong with that. First of all, you're making some assumptions that all Asians speak Asian languages. And for an American of Asian descent, for example, they might be a later generation American. Uh, that person may be of mixed race. An Asian may have been adopted by non-Asian parents, which is becoming, quite common for some time in the United States. The other thing that's wrong with just pointing at some random Asian characters and expecting some nearby Asian person to read it to you is you are making the assumption that all Asian cultures share the same language, and that we're all just one big country, which is very insulting. I once visited a mountain town in Colorado where I came upon the acquaintance of, I think, a very drunk guy who kept telling me that he loved to visit the country of Asia. So don't be like that guy. So what should you do instead? Well, only if you know someone very well and you know their ethnicity, you might be able to say, like, is that Vietnamese or is that Chinese? If you're with a Filipino friend, do not say, is that Japanese? And if you're with someone you just met or you don't know very well, don't even ask them that question. Try to get to know them beyond what ethnicity they are, because we are all more than just our race or ethnicity. Please don't try to make someone feel othered or different by interrogating them about their race or what languages they speak. Get to know them as a person, just like meeting anybody else. And if you do this, I'm going to tell everyone that you were raised by wolves. No offense to wolves, so please don't do these awful things I'm telling you not to do. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, why should you be a polyglot? Well, knowing multiple languages allows you to see the world and or solve a problem from different perspectives. And, the problem is if you know only one language, you don't know what you don't know. And the journey of learning another language brings you closer to the people and communities that speak or use that language. Of course, the more effort you put into learning something, the more you'll get out of it. But you don't need to become an expert or fluent to start seeing the benefits of speaking or using a language right away. And you'll see that in a moment in my presentation. So it's one thing for me to tell you about the benefits of being a polyglot, but let me demonstrate to you with some examples. And some of the greatest lessons in life always start with a great love story. This is no different. So I would like to introduce you to Eric Richardson. He is a systems engineer at Lockheed Martin. He is a former typical white American who only spoke English. I'm sharing with you his polyglot story today, and he gives his blessing for this presentation, all the jokes at his expense. So I'm going to share with you the language lessons I tried to teach Eric when we first started dating. The first lesson is how to say hello in Vietnamese. The word is chào. In English, the subject you can be implicit. You don't say hello you. And in English, you can apply to any person that one may be speaking to. But here's the twist. In Vietnamese, there is no generic you that can apply to anyone a person may be speaking to. So you is like a generic in Swift. The specific you data type depends on one's relationship with the person being spoken to. For polymorphic languages like Java, you is a superclass where the subclass type is not bound until runtime, that is, until one knows the person they are speaking to. Does this seem confusing? Let me give you an example of how to say hello. So one of the first lessons I taught Eric was how to say hello to my aunt. By the way, this photo is not photoshopped. I'm 5'1", by the way, and I did stand at least a head taller than my aunt when she was alive. But, she was small in stature. My aunt was huge and personality and heart. And one big thing she did was help raise me and my brothers and sisters when my parents were hard at work. So I taught Eric to say to my aunt, Jiao Bak Il. And her response to Eric was she said, Jiao Jiao, and she said, hello, nephew. Now, Eric thought in her enthusiasm to say hello to him that she said, hello, hello, like Jiao Jiao. So that's what Eric heard. But hello, nephew is not the same thing as hello, hello. So it's sort of like, just because some words sound similar doesn't mean that they mean the same thing, such as Java is not the same thing as JavaScript. So the next lesson I wanted to teach Eric was to say hello to my boss. When I worked at Raytheon, I once worked for an older Vietnamese man that I called Uncle. So at a company event where family members and friends were also allowed to attend, I brought Eric along to meet my manager, and I taught him to say Jiao Bak Yung. And my manager replied by saying, wow, you speak Vietnamese so well. You are so fluent. So you can see my aunt called him nephew. My boss said he was fluent. So just from learning a few words, Eric has already leveled up his social standing just by learning a few words of Vietnamese. Now, you might be wondering, well, how do I say hello to everybody, like to a group of people? You would do that by saying Jiao Ban. Because friends is like a catch-all term when speaking informally to a group of people who you may have different relationships with. Think of it like the default case in a switch statement to determine you at runtime. Now you're probably thinking, what happens if I'm addressing a crowd of people, like I'm giving a speech? Well, one way you can do that is to say, Chào ông bà, anh chị em. So you would reserve this for more formal greetings, like giving a speech. And notice how it tries to address every relationship individually. Okay, so now Eric knows how to say hello. Of course, it's always helpful to know how to say thank you and you're welcome. You do that by saying cảm ơn. You can leave off the you in Vietnamese. So Eric naturally asked, well, how do you say you're welcome? And, at first I would think, well, it's easy. You say không có gì, except. In my personal experience, most people don't say you're welcome. Instead, someone might nod and smile, or they might say thank you back, or even say nothing. So saying không có gì is like using semicolons in Swift or JavaScript. It's nice to have or to say, but it's not required like it would be in Java or C++. So now we're getting into some really meaty stuff. What to call different family members. Now, words for family members are really, really complicated in Vietnamese. Let me explain with a few examples. There are 2 words for grandfather and 2 words for grandmother, whether you're talking about on your mother's side or your father's side. Now, uncle and aunt gets really complicated. There are 3 words for uncle and 5 words for aunt. The reason being is that every word designates whether they're your mother's or father's relative, whether they're older or younger, and in the case with the aunt, if it's a younger sister-in-law. You don't have to memorize all that. Now, for brother and sister, there are 2 words for brother and sister because a word that designates older brother, older sister, younger sister. Now, what about cousin? The word for cousin is the same words for brother or sister, but with a modifier to indicate your brother or sister from your aunt or uncle's side of the family. So, bottom line, Vietnamese is a strongly typed language that relies heavily on inheritance. The word you use depends on your family member's age and or marital relationship to your mother or father. It's more like Java this way instead of Swift, which relies more heavily on using protocols and composition like family relationships in English. Now, we're going to go into words with direct translations with some regional differences. Just like in the US, people have different words for mother or father depending on what country, what region of the country they come from, personal preferences, family traditions, etc. So if you're from northern Vietnam, you would call your mother or father Bo Mẹ. If your family is from South Vietnam, you would call them Ba Ma. So think of it like most programming languages have if statements, for loops, etc., but also different variants of them. So the next thing I tried to teach Eric were some words that don't have direct translations. An example of that is the word geo. Now, in English, you might say it means let them have their way in order to strengthen your bond or relationship with that person. That's because geo does not have a one-to-one direct translation. Not all words do across languages. The quickest translation might mean to compromise or to spoil someone, but that doesn't fully encapsulate the concept. For example, you might spoil a child by giving them too much candy. But Jill really means performing a generous act out of your love or connection for that person. So the top picture is me holding a rainbow trout, and I love to go fishing. Eric loves to go fishing too, but probably not to the extent that I do. In fact, Eric took me fishing all the time when we first started dating. That was how he courted me. That was how he geo me. And the picture on the bottom, that's me at HearseCon, which is a classic car show for hearses. And Eric loves hearses and classic cars. And the thing is, hearses scare me a little bit, but I go to HearseCon with him because that was my way to geo him. So you think of these words that don't have one-to-one direct translations as sort of like programming. For example, you use a map function in Swift, which is pretty concise, but a for loop is not as concise. Or if you're a cross-platform programmer, like I used to be, you would write branching code wherever a feature doesn't have a direct counterpart or translation to native code. So now you're asking, I'm spending all this time trying to teach Eric Vietnamese, did the language lessons work? Well, do you remember my Aunt Buckio? Now, I have a lot of challenges with my family, as a lot of people do, that I'm not going to get into right now. But my aunt was one of the few family members that consistently showed me kindness and was genuinely interested in my happiness. So it really meant a lot to me when one day she said to me before she passed away, "Cháu có hợp với chú kia không? Lấy nhau đi." Now, a more literal translation might be, "Are you two compatible? Then you should get married." But I think what she really meant to say was, "Do you love him? Then go get him." And I think you kind of have an idea of what happened. We did get married, and last year we celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary. That's us riding the Oregon Coast Railroad train. There's a picture of me and Eric with our Yading, our family, including our dog Barry. So, even though Eric never became fluent in Vietnamese, and in his defense as his teacher, neither have I, but Eric's efforts in learning about my language and culture helped bring us closer together and helped make our marriage stronger. So in that case, you could say that the language lessons worked. And even though my aunt passed away before our wedding, I often dreamt of her after that. So I think that was her way of saying that she was there. So I hope by now I've convinced you of the benefits of becoming a polyglot. So how do you become one? Well, I would say start with the basics, right? That usually means hello world. Look for patterns, similarities to what you already know. Be completely open to new concepts or ideas. This is good for your personal and technical growth. Find a community that you can learn and grow with. Don't learn in a vacuum. Join an in-person language learning group once the pandemic is over, or join an online language learning group, but build relationships, attend conferences, take classes. A lot of conferences will often have a beginner's track. And start using what you learn immediately and improve as you learn more. Don't wait until you become an expert. Just think about the programming projects that you've done, how you have to often have to go back and refactor once you get better at it. Same thing with your conversations. You can refactor your conversations as you improve as well. So these are the things I went over in my talk today. And again, I'm Vui Nguyen. We discussed the benefits of becoming a polyglot, and follow me on Twitter, on my website. And remember, we're still in a pandemic, so stay safe out there. Thanks.
Hi.
Hello.
So
Great talk
this
there.
is the surprise. Here's Eric.
Hello.